have Cindy, Aaron, and Randy's there. Okay.
And actually, if you guys can rename yourselves to your number, then you'll pop up to the top of our list of attendees, and that's better for voting for me.
Like that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I will be able to do that in 10 minutes. I can't right now, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. We'll watch for you for voting. Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Are we streaming, Randy or Jerry?
Yes, we are streaming and good to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, we'll welcome you to this special meeting of our Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind Standing Committee. We have been asked to evaluate a report that came out from the Public Ed Appropriations meeting to the Executive Appropriations Committee, and want whatever recommendations that come out of here will go to our board next week, which is why we had to put this in kind of a quick matter. We actually determined to move forward on this on Friday. So I want to thank staff for working hard to get this put together, and also thank our board members for being flexible in their schedules. We'll start with our introductions. My name is Leanne Wood. I represent District 4, South Davis County and North Salt Lake, and I am the chair of the Utah USDB Standing Committee, Vice Chair Booth.
I am Randy Booth from District 13, representing the school districts Nebo and Provo City, and I am thrilled to be a part of this standing committee. It's such an important work that we're engaged in, and happy to make myself available anytime we need to get this job done.
Thank you, Vice Chair Booth. Member Longacre, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. My name is Erin Longacre. I represent District 7, which is down in the Draper-Sandy area. I have mostly canyons in my district and a little bit of granite, and also happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Member Davis.
Hi, Cindy Davis. Grateful to be here. I represent areas in Utah County and Salt Lake County, but really thinking about the whole state today and how we move forward and recommendations that will impact a lot of kids across the state, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. And Member Brinton.
Hi, my name is Board Member Joanne Brinton. I represent Southern Utah in District 15, and am just really happy and honored to be representing the whole state for USDB and these kids that need our services, and I'm grateful for all the work here and all the staff that helps with this committee.
Thank you. And members, if you have the ability, can you put your district number in front of your name in the rename tool? That allows it to pop up to the top. So if we do any voting, Andrea is able to see you better in our voting. All right, we will start. We have a number of public comments. We'll start first with Alicia Ensign. Sorry, Elisa. I have two things, and it has your one with an H and one without. So I apologize.
I reply to either. That's how it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me a moment of your time today. I came to this meeting last month and watched you guys, and I joined with the deaf community and parents of deaf and hard of hearing students at the Capitol this past week. And I'm thrilled to see your guys' concern and your response and your willingness to set extra time to meet today to discuss this. I truly appreciate that. I did email Andrea a copy of the community response to the PEA's recommendations that I hope is shared with each of you and goes into more specifics of some of our concerns. Individually, as a parent, I just wanted to come in today and say on this recommendation from PEA, there's two things that I really want to emphasize that myself as a parent and those parents I've been talking to, that we really want to show our support for Utah Schools for the Deaf and the current service model that's in place. We value each and every service, the campus programs, the outreach, the PIP, the bilingual communication model. All of those are very important, and we treasure those choices and the options for these. Lastly, I'm just super concerned in the wording when it's talking about the secondary program, and it uses the phrase limit comprehensive services. That felt like a big red flag to us, and that our students would be restricted from services. So just today, as you're in your committee and having these conversations, please take these points into consideration and consider how we can continue services for all of the services for our deaf and hard of hearing students. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. I appreciate that. Our next comment from Roberta Dunlap.
Hello. Hello there. I wanted to say how excited I am to be here today. Unfortunately, I was not able to translate this from our ASL to our English, and it's a little bit harder when we only have 2 minutes, and that's why I did send this to the standing committee, and you guys could read that at a later time. So I would like to, first of all, introduce myself. My name is Roberta Dunlap. I am a third generation deaf individual, and I'm a mother of 2 deaf children, the age of 3 and the age of 8. As I mentioned, I've sent those videos of my 2 students, and hopefully you guys can read that as well. So they are the 4th generation deaf, and they both are enrolled at the Jean Massue School for the Deaf in Salt Lake City. I want to say that I disagree with the PEA's recommendation with that report about reducing and limiting those services, and also limiting parent choice, including myself. We know what works for the deaf community, and we really want to consider making recommendations and those priorities needed for our deaf children. So my child was diagnosed and went to a public school, and then transferred into a language-rich deaf education environment where there is that sense of a belonging. They provide education and foundation for developing confidence and language for my children. I am a deaf mother, and I want to see my children thrive as much as any other child, provided with equal communication, and also an environment, a language-rich environment, and experts who understand the impact of language deprivation. So I strongly encourage USD to maintain its current service model. I want to continue deaf and hard of hearing and deaf plus students who are both IEP or Section 504 plans here at the deaf school. I want to make sure that we have a comprehensive high school program and not limited. I also want to make sure that the people that are making our decisions for placement understand our community and our model. So we have linguistic and culture that is involved in this student, specifically for all of our students. So we also have services, OT, PT, early intervention, audiology, sports, summer camps, etc. And my children who are on 504s, they rely on those supports, and their local LEA cannot meet those needs. So if we provide a different service model, we will not only deprive our children the rich language environment, but also the services that they need that the LEAs cannot supply. So we need to focus on our deaf, hard of hearing children who need to have continued access to ASL. And if we deprive that of them, it will impact their language growth and their development going forward. There are long-term consequences to not being able to offer them this model. So there was a paper that was published in 2020. And it was a brief where it was children who do not have continued access to language before the age of 4. They will never achieve fluency in any language. It affects their processing. It affects their linguistic, and it will impact them negatively on our deaf children. And that can be avoided. Also in the Journal of Deaf Studies in 2023 and Deaf Education, it said that early exposure to natural language acquisition and direct instruction can lead to strong academic achievement, social, and personal benefit to bilingualism. The Utah law recognizes that all children who do not qualify for special education services, including my children who are currently on a 504 plan, they are still required to receive specialized instruction to receive their education fully. And I feel like, if my children are exempt from those comprehensive services, that will negatively impact their learning and their development going forward. So the Deaf Education Minister and Deaf Program, CASD, they published something in 2007 saying that students that are deaf and hurting should have access to school academics and the classroom that can have an equal and same goal going forward. The IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, does require children with disabilities are provided free and appropriate education, public education, excuse me, in the least restrictive environment.
Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you.
So appreciate your time. Okay, our next person is Sarah Erb.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Erb. I'm a parent of a student who is blind and attends a public charter school in Salt Lake City. I had a couple just things that I've been noting as things have been happening this last couple of weeks. I was surprised to find out that a lot of students who are receiving, who are whose LEA is listed as USDB didn't have an IEP, which I thought was required by IDEA for that change of placement to not be their boundaried school. So I would maybe encourage more of an audit on actual special education to make sure that these students who should be receiving special education services are eligible to receive that funding source and the funding as well for those positions that would help to provide that special education service, which would also include the related service of transportation to USDB. Another topic kind of at the end of the recommendations from the PEA to the EIC was about USIMAC. USIMAC is just typically, from what I understand, is providing accessible materials for students who are deaf, or I'm sorry, who are blind or have low vision. However, those are not the only print disabilities that we have across the state. So maybe looking at, for that reason, looking at housing that under the Board of Education and not under USDB, so that we can encompass all of the students who have print disabilities. That would include students who aren't able to hold a book, aren't able to write or read or write by holding the book or manually holding like a pen or a pencil. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to listening to the discussion. We appreciate you all so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. All right, and finally we have Mary Walker.
Hi there. Let me see how to get my camera on. Sorry. Disappeared. Here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to address this board. I am happy to discuss this with USBE board members and also all the USDB folks that have showed up. I am Mary Walker, a proud parent of 5, 2 of which are blind adults. One is attending Brigham Young University as a sophomore, and the other is working and is 27 years old. So I've been around a little while and witnessed a few things. I have concerns about the misuse of funds highlighted by the most recent audit of USDB. I'm hopeful, however, that USBE is serious about structuring oversight into the workings of USDB this time around, this audit. I'm very happy about that. And I'm seeing good signs of that. I applaud the members of this committee for taking this matter very seriously. I am a graduate of the Marriott School of Management at Brigham Young University, and we spent a whole semester on organizational structure and organizational charts. As an information systems specialist, I guess I'm a little nerdy when it comes to this. And I think that there are some problems in the organizational structure of the Utah State Board of Education as it relates to Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind. I believe that this is where the confusion and margin for mismanagement of funds is occurring. While USBE has direct oversight over my LEA, Wasatch School District, USBE has a different organizational structure or upline, if you will, for USDB, USB, USD, and they are not really considered to be the same as the other LEAs. But their students very seldom, let's see, USB and USD are considered to be the same LEA, but their students very seldom share a classroom or activities or teachers. They definitely have different educational needs, and even least restrictive environment is very different for the two different populations. The questions before the committee is how do we stop the commingling of funds for these two very different populations while still funding both, which I feel very passionately about. I don't want the deaf community to ever feel like it is us against them. We are both funded, and I think that's really important to reassure both populations that funding is happening still. And placement is still very much under the laws of IDEA. So while USBE has a direct oversight, or I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through this quickly. The separation in reporting between the two populations is something I've been asking for a very long time. On the USDB website in years past, there has been much talk of their 100% graduation rate. On the blind side, that consisted of one student. USB does not allow for middle school or high school placement for blind students except in rare circumstances. That's very different than the hearing impaired side. Even though I've been a parent of blind children for 27 years, I've only entered the Salt Lake campus building very few times because my children's least restrictive environment was their local LEA. They joined local swim teams. They tried out for professional private choirs. They went to their own prom and were elected as like the prom queen. And they just had a very rich local just enmeshment with their sighted peers. And so it's very different. And I recognize that there's very important reasons for hearing impaired children to be around other hearing impaired children, to be around other hearing impaired mentors. And so I think we need to look at this and separate these two schools. We have very different needs. I recommend the board shine a bright light on the program Bridges, run by USB as a postgraduate program. This is a new program that came to be under Superintendent Joel Coleman. This, in my opinion, only benefited a very few students, and I'm very glad those students were benefited from it. But my children gained life skills from USDBVI programs and through vocational rehab after high school, as they both attended college directly after graduation. How can we make sure that all blind students, including those on a college or work track, receive services equally across the state between the ages of 18 and 22? I recommend the board restructure the organizational chart as it pertains to USIMAC and the State Library for the Blind and encourage transparency around how these two organizations are funded and how they are being operated. Please ensure that every student in the state, regardless of placement, has access to those services and materials. I recommend the board separate USB and USD, and I believe that transparency will come as we do that. Let's see. I'm sure I'm close to time. When providing VI services for my child, Mia, USDB was often reached out to private contractors because she had surpassed what most of the educators were able to teach. And so I think we have to look at the fact that we are private contracting a lot of this. USDB does not have to be the one who is providing services for the blind and deaf in Utah. They should be treated just the same as all the other LEAs and should be held to the same standards. that's my opinion. Thank you for your time. And please reach out to me if you have further questions.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate your time. All right, and I've been notified that Roberta's comments were not accessible through the interpreter, and I apologize for that. I think sometimes when we have cameras on and off, the wrong interpreter the interpreter doesn't always get pinned. So can we make sure, Jerry, that we're seeing only the interpreter as we move forward? And if we'd ask anyone else to turn their cameras off, that will support that better. But I apologize for that. That we didn't get the right window going. All right, I'm still not seeing the interpreter in the big window. All right, I'm going to turn my camera off, and then so I want to talk about how we got here before we move forward on discussing some recommendations. We last session in the 2025 legislative session, 2 reports came out, one from the Public Education Appropriation, 2 Executive Appropriations, and then Executive Appropriations Committee released some language in addition, and that's in our backup today. Those 2 directed that a work group be convened, some discussion happened during interim to look at various areas of USDB governance, the USDB's role in public education, finances, and data. And so over the summer, we began in June and completed our work in October. And we had a 19-member committee that worked together to answer those questions, which I found had been asked for at least the last 5 years. Those questions had been asked repeatedly of USDB. And so we took it to heart and attempted to answer those questions. USDB in that work group presented our recommendations back to PEA in October, as was asked. And then they took that report, plus 2 audits, an internal audit on finances and budget from USBE, and an OLAG audit that just came out this last week. And they sent some recommendations to Executive Appropriations. We were not privy to those recommendations prior to them coming out. So just know that those, while they did take some of our recommendations from the work group, there were some areas that came out that obviously had some misunderstanding of how placement occurred at USDB and some of our requirements that we need to fill to make sure our students are getting the services that they need. And so now we have determined to send our recommendations and concerns back to them. And that's what the purpose of this meeting is to somehow put together a resource, a letter, or recommendations that will then go to our full board, as our committee is simply a recommending body. It will go to the full board next week at our board meeting, and then can be sent to the members of Executive Appropriations Committee, so they have something to reference as they start drafting some kind of statute towards how they want to see USDB funded, governance, data, all of those things in the future. So from there, we have a letter that our superintendency, they met on Tuesday or Friday for a number of hours and worked through every single one of those recommendations, talked about what we were already doing, what we could support, and those things where there are very much concerns that we want to express to EAC. So Andrea, do you have that initial draft that we can start off of?
Chairwood, this is Deputy Superintendent Voorhees. I have it, and
okay.
and I can edit as
you
go.
driving? Are you driving
yes.
today? Aren't you
I'm
on
driving.
vacation? Aren't you
Nope.
supposed to be on vacation?
Nope. I'm
Okay.
here.
Oh, she's
Okay.
back.
All right, good. I'm like, sorry, this is Thanksgiving weekend or week.
Okay, do you see that? I'm gonna make
Yes.
it a little bigger.
Yeah, and if you want to close the tab, that probably would open it up also. There you go. Thank you. All right, so this is divided up into the categories that the EAC recommendations were made. Walking through that step by step, there were some that were kind of those bright red, bold things need to be changed here. So I'll open this up to board members to discuss. Hopefully I think you received this Saturday evening when it was finally completed, but hopefully you've had a little bit of time to look it over. Do we have any discussion that we can start having on this?
Chair Wood,
Yes, go ahead.
I read through the efforts of the superintendency and then additional comments that came from Michelle, and I feel that they have provided very good background information and clarity in terms of each of the recommendations that we're responding to. And I have noticed over the last couple of days that we have received additional input from concerned and interested parents and organizations in the state of Utah who, for eons of time, have been concerned and supportive of the educational needs and resources of our deaf and blind students. And I think that it might be important for us to read through together just so that we are able to get not all of the background information, but the specific recommendations under each of the headings. And if anyone could take responsibility to also kind of be thinking about what came from the parents who kind of representatives of our Utah Blind Association and Deaf Associations, make sure that those comments and needs, as well as the parents who have expressed themselves today, that those concerns have been addressed by the superintendency. I would be very surprised if they have not been, but I've not taken the time to compare what came from the parents as well as what's coming from the superintendency. So I thought as a starting point, it might be helpful for us to actually read the recommendation of the superintendency together here in the meeting and see if there is any specific input from any of the board members before we make a general motion for the entire document that has been presented to us.
All right, so the first two, thank you, Vice Chair Booth. So the first two recommendations, and this letter primarily focused on those we disagree with. I think we had, what is there? Let's see. There were approximately 13 to 14 different recommendations, I believe. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, about 20 recommendations. These focus specifically on the ones that we disagreed with. We felt like we could work with others, the legislature through statutes as they draft on those things that maybe needed minor tweaking. But the first two were include a statutory role and purpose for USDB to include the USDB structure is first to support the education of students who are deaf, blind, or deafblind as designated through the individual education program process in coordination with the student's local education agency through outreach services on a USDB operated special class in an LEA facility. USDB may be designated as a student's full-time LEA on a minimal basis as warranted by the student's IEP. And the second was due to higher costs exclude the option in statute for a student without an IEP detailing specific deaf, blind, or deaf-blind instructional requirements from attendance at USDB. So those were the concerns that we had. I think that primarily the minimal basis, the statutorily designating what a student gets. It shouldn't be a role of statute. It should be a role of the IEP team with those parents and educators and specialists who have determined the needs. And then secondly, excluding the option without an IEP, knowing that we have a number of students that are there. If you want to scroll up, we specifically, I guess, down. I always say it wrong. Do you want to go up to the top of the letter? Thank you. Okay. So we called out the role of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. You can scroll down a little bit. Calling out that we currently provide service to many students with this designation, and that for this reason, our board does not support these recommendations. Any comments to this section? Member Davis.
Well, two things. Would it be possible to, is it possible to query staff while we're discussing this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one, I have a question for Dr. Voorhees. And I think we just, on public record, need to have a conversation about 504, IEP, specialized instruction. Can it be under both? How placement is different from location, but you know, I just need to know what can we do in this space, and is it for a student to attend USDB? Is the 504 team equipped to make that decision similar to the IEP team? And then I have a format issue after that.
Okay. Thank you. So let's listen to Superintendent Voorhees, and then if Dr. Tanner would like to weigh in also, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair. Leah Voorhees, Deputy Superintendent of USBE. So IDEA requires that the IEP determine needs, then goals, then services, then placement, right? We've talked about that before. The placement needs to be in the least restrictive environment that the services can be provided. 504, a student comes to school first. And then when they have a qualifying disability, then they are evaluated to determine that they do actually have a qualifying disability, and a team determines what services and supports they need. The difference, well, there are several differences, but the difference I think that you are getting at, Board Member Davis, is generally speaking, what a student with a qualifying disability under Section 504 needs to be able to access and make progress in the curriculum is accommodations. So the majority of services that the student gets are really supports in the form of accommodations. However, there are actual services, which can be, to use your word, instruction. in order to support a student in accessing the educational program. Generally speaking, they're shorter term than an IEP. It's not ongoing and forever. It's provided the instruction or the actual service, like occupational therapy or physical therapy or something, is provided to support the student in accessing, and then once the student can access, then it's not necessary anymore. Where for an IEP, that's the service is provided ongoing in order to access specially designed instruction or the general ed curriculum. So that's complicated, but so it's a little bit different. Instruction can be provided with the 504. It isn't the norm. Let me say it that way. Then,
oh, sorry. I thought
yes, please.
I thought you were finished. You can finish, and then I just had a clarifying question about what you said.
Yeah. So, and then I was just gonna comment on your question about placement. So, placement is a specific decision point. It's a specific discussion in the very linear IEP process, where placement is not the discussion in a 504 plan, because the student comes to school, has an educational program, and then the 504 is to help the student access it. So that's a difference. I hope that is one of the differences that you were asking about.
Yes, may I follow up, Chair?
Yes, please, Member Davis.
So, Dr. Voorhees, if specialized instruction is different from specialized service or support, is that what I'm hearing? Or you're saying in some cases it can be the same. In most placement's not a discussion for 504, but sometimes it is. And when we're looking at this situation, what do we need to know about the differences, and do they matter legally for USDB? I know it's an individual situation with teams, but in general, what do we need to keep in mind?
So 504 teams don't place students. Students are already in school, and the team determine if a student has a qualifying disability, then the team determines what accommodations the student needs to access the curriculum, and sometimes that includes instruction. But placement isn't part of the decision.
Then why do we, help me understand, do we have students at USDB with only a 504 but not an IEP?
Yes.
And is that fine, or are we outside of a legal boundary somewhere?
No, you're not outside of the legal boundary, because so some students who are deaf and hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, may not be eligible for an IEP because they don't meet the 3-prong criteria for special education, which is have one of the 13 disabilities that interferes with academic and functional progress, and number 3, that requires specially designed instruction. They may have a disability. It may or may not interfere with academic and functional progress, and it may not require specially designed instruction. Therefore, they're not eligible, but they still have the first criteria, which is they have a disability. And so then they would be eligible for a 504, and Utah has chosen to allow students who are eligible for a 504, so they have a disability, but it doesn't require specially designed instruction, to attend USDB special classes or special schools to participate in the rich language environment and to participate in the environment of the special class or special school. It would be a problem legally if IDEA funds were being used for that purpose, but it's state funds that are used to pay for the educational program of those students. So there isn't a legal issue. Did that respond to your question?
Yes, it did. So somewhere along the way, misinformation has circulated around, it sounds to me, and students with a 504 and with an IEP both can legally attend USDB if that's what their team determines and the student needs. Even though a 504 team doesn't determine placement, a student legally can attend USDB with a 504 plan. Is that what I'm hearing?
At present, yes, that is how Utah has functioned.
So they don't have to function that way under the law, but they can function that way under the law.
Correct.
Thank you. Last question really quickly. And this is probably selfish. Am I understanding that specialized or accommodations are on a 504 plan, but modifications and accommodations can be on a IEP?
Yeah, they can be both.
And can modifications be on a 504, or does that require specially designed instruction for different grade level work?
That's a good question that I would want our 504 specialist Holly Bell to answer, so I could get back to you. I think
I'll
so,
take it
but I don't
offline.
want to be definitive.
As long as it doesn't impact this decision, I'll take that offline. Thank you. So Dr. Tanner, would you like to speak to how our students are getting with 504s are getting to campus right now? What and our number, how many does this impact?
Yeah, there are about we would go through the numbers, 15% of our students who are on a 504 plan. Typically, these are students who they go to an IEP meeting, and as they're in the IEP meeting, they determine, as Dr. Voorhees has explained, that they're not eligible for an IEP because what's happened is they're not delayed. These are typically parents, deaf parents with deaf children, as you saw in the public comments this morning, who have had a very robust language exposure during their birth to 3 years. And so they go through that process and they don't show delays. They may or may not speak. That is something that does not qualify you necessarily for just speech services for a student. So that's why it's not appropriate through that avenue. And some parents don't want to choose to speak. So that's another issue, but they do want to be around other students that are deaf and hard of hearing and participate in the language rich environment. And in that case, those students would come through to our school through a 504 service plan.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, Member Davis, you mentioned you had a formatting concern. Well, I don't want to take time away from others who need or want to dig into the content here. I just, I prefer very few words to communicate the biggest punch with the fewest words. I don't think people read lots of words. And even if they do, I think it makes the message less clear. So, I mean, my preference would be if the where we're addressing the 504 plan, I'd prefer it to go specifically into the right under the PEA recommendations as part of our response. So I'd prefer to see very short intro to the letter, then PEA recommendation, our response if it's different than theirs, PEA recommendation, our response if different than theirs, and then a list at the bottom of their recommendations with which we concur. Okay, so let's okay, let's move that then to the end, understanding that. Let's move to the other recommendations. Do I have any comments? Member Booth, Member Longacre, Member Britton. I think this is one area where we've got lots of feedback from parents. We understand the concern here. Member Longacre, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, as I try to figure out how to turn on my video and microphone. I personally, and I would like to hear what the rest of the board feels. I don't want to deny anyone if they have a 504 access to the services that are provided at USDB. If that's what we're discussing right now. I mean, is the feel that we should not have 504 students there, or that we should? I don't feel like we should deny anyone.
Well, I know I will speak personally. I mean, this is my personal story, right? My sister didn't start attending the school for the deaf until 7th grade. She had no cognitive decline. Her hearing loss came through spinal meningitis. But and she'd had a language rich environment because the entire family signed our whole life. But when she got to 7th grade and started attending the school for the deaf, she now was able to participate in basketball, volleyball, have friends everywhere. She had one friend that signed K through 6. All of her friends she could communicate with once she got there. So it is a different, but she would not have qualified for an IEP. So from a personal standpoint, I've seen how children thrive once they're in the language rich environment. Member Booth.
So I am totally in agreement with Member Longacre. I definitely feel that we must maintain the opportunity and the resources that would allow students to be in that language-rich environment if that is the accommodation that's needed for them. And so anything that we can do to emphasize and in a positive way acknowledge the good that has been done in the past and that we are committed to continuing in the future for the benefit of our students who are on 504s and need that accommodation and need that language-rich environment and those activity opportunities. I want us to be as proactive and as positive and hopeful as we can possibly be so that the legislature will understand that this is not just it would be nice if we could. This is a critical, necessary component of the educational opportunities we're providing for students on 504s.
Great, thank you. All right, I am sorry, checking for hands. I'm not seeing any other comments. Let's move to the next section and then we'll come back and discuss potential amendments or formatting changes. So the next one was in all of these areas, finance data and resident LEA responsibility. And if we go down to the PEA recommendations, here we have 5 that we had concern and concerns is an interesting because there's parts we might have concerns with, or it might be the whole thing. So the first one is amend statute that beginning in fiscal year 2028 includes students where USDB is their designated LEA in the regular K through 12 WPU and special education add-on WPU programs to provide associated funding to USDB. So it would start incorporating. Right now, USDB is funded through a single legislative request with some other buckets, but primarily it's a large legislative request. So this would start putting them into that WPU and an add-on program. The benefit to that is that we see a little bit of an increase as students increased, then that WP and add-on would increase. They would also get an inflationary increase. So there's some benefits to that. But as you'll see up above, there's some concerns to that also. Include intent language in the 2026 budget to direct that the state board develop procedures to ensure USDB designated students are included in the annual October census of enrolled students and WPU funding programs like other LEAs, and report to the PEA subcommittee during their August 2026 meeting. We have some concerns with timing on that, as you read above. We're not sure that we would be ready for the October 2026 counts. The next one is amend statute to review and approve any changes that impact facility use and make recommendations to the legislature on changes that increase or decrease costs, including increasing course offerings or educational services provided to students that require specialized space. We have some concerns. We are the LEA and don't believe that the authority to determine what course offerings should be designated by the legislature, as you'll read above. Including content language in the budget bill to limit comprehensive high school services to the Salt Lake campus. We have concerns with that. We have students throughout the state. We have our USB students who are only in the Ogden campus, those that are in the residence and so this is a huge concern. And then finally, include statutory provisions that recognize that the most efficient model for providing a comprehensive high school experience to students includes coordination with LEA high schools and the provisions of education and facilities, and have some concern with that word efficient. Sometimes efficient is not the most effective. Efficient may not be the most equitable in getting students what they need. So there's kind of some discussion about what's going on at top. Member Brinton.
Yes, hi, thank you. I just want to echo the previous comments below. Before with Member Booth and Davis and Longacre. I think if we could have a letter that shows more clarity and more directly aligns with their recommendations to show where we differ, and have it be, short and bullet pointed, it will be seen better. And then also just keeping the services. I really worry about throwing out all the services for these children for the few siblings that attend based on the IEPs and 504s. And I know there's been a lot of work and care and thought going into all this, and I appreciate all the parents who have reached out and shared comments. It's such an important thing, and it's a small group of students that we're serving throughout the state, but I would really, there's a lot of these recommendations that are concerning, especially with only having one campus in Salt Lake when we service students throughout the state in different ways. And I think we need to keep those services and be mindful as we go about. But thank you.
Thank you, Member Brinton. Okay, so I've shared it with Superintendent Voorhees. Can you put draft 2 up? Just for this is kind of an alternate perspective to look at. Most of the letter is the same. Member Brinton, is your hand up for another comment? Or
yes, it's for another comment, because there's a place in their recommendations, I forgot, and I haven't heard this come up yet, where there's a recommendation to change their number 2 on recommendations. It's on page 3, where they want to designate individual deputy administrators for the school for the deaf and the school for the blind. Why are we changing the name where everywhere else it's superintendents and assistant superintendents? I don't understand that, and have concerns about confusion there and changing the roles completely.
I think, having talked to Superintendent Hart about this, and I think she may be on a plane if she's still here, that they were trying to give flexibility. So they weren't naming the roles, they were allowing USBE to name the roles. But it is certainly somewhere where we could discuss it as it moves forward with when they start to draft the legislation.
Okay.
Sherwood, which document is it that you want?
I just barely shared it with you. It's called draft 2.
Oh, I got it. Hang on.
Sorry, it's not.
You're good.
It was just a thought this morning. If we took what was already written there and maybe called out our recommendations a little more clearly.
Is
so
this it? Can you see
yeah.
it now?
Yep,
Okay.
that's it. So here's a thought, comparing what you have in backup. It eliminates the two paragraphs after the first one, to kind of to member Davis's perspective, keeping things a little bit shorter. I don't know that any of the words in the letter have actually changed. It just calls out our recommendations a little more clearly. Any comments can you scroll down? And I apologize, it was literally in the last hour before we met that I threw this together. Any comments to this format? And then we'll go to lettering, to wording and stuff.
Sorry, do we have this in our backup too? Did you send this letter to look at bigger? If I want to pull that up.
Oh, you know what? Like I said, it was just like in the last hour. I was like, how could we make this easier to read? So let me hurry and find it and get it to you.
Chair Wood.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, would there be any benefit in placing the PEA recommendations at the top so that that is the reference because we're addressing them and they sent those recommendations to us for us to address, rather than making it feel like okay, we're going to slip those in at the end of all of our responses. If we started with those, it's kind of like as a teacher beginning where the students are and going and progressing from where each individual student is. So here's where PEA is at the moment, and then here is a USBE response, rather than here's a response, and by the way, what we're responding to is down here at the bottom for your information. So I thought it might be helpful to have that PEA recommendation immediately followed by what you have there in red, with in each of the sections. And but I really do like the clarity that you've been able to. It seems to speak to me rather than be quite so much narrative. It feels like, okay, this is something that I can dive into and understand and access quickly. So I think that's good.
So when at the beginning of the letter, we have the recommendations for which we respectively request additional dialogue, changes, or removal from consideration are detailed below, organized by the major categories included in your memo. Would you want that just to say the recommendations for which you respectively request additional dialogue, changes, or removal from consideration are listed below, and put those recommendations? Is that what you're considering?
No, I think that just under, for example, role in public education, rather than going right from that title to USBE response recommendation, that's where I would put the PE.
Okay, and that's the way they are in the original letter. So put it back the way it was in the original letter. So,
Okay.
right? Yep.
I see. Now I did, but I didn't.
Oh, actually, no, they
I
were.
didn't get that. It's always been towards the end.
You're right. You're right. Okay.
So I just think we start with where we're at.
Okay.
What prompted us to have a response was your recommendation. So here, just as a review, you'll remember, I'm sure, because you wrote, well, you had somebody write it for you, but here's what you recommended. And here is our response. Thank you very much.
Okay. Member Davis to this discussion?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say when I spoke with you earlier, when I was hoping for certain formats, and I don't think I communicated well, but I would do the same thing. I'd put the header and then PEA's recommendation and USBE's recommendation under that. I would make the PEA recommendation in a bit smaller font, quite frankly, and highlight our recommendations in a regular font with the color change that you've used.
Okay, so do you want to scroll down and take those PEA recommendations? Is there anyone opposed to that change, Joanne or
I have a
Erin?
question really quick though.
I don't think all of them, right? Just the
No,
ones in the
the
section.
ones that we concur with, that we agree with, those should go at the very bottom of the letter.
Okay, and we haven't included those at all.
Yeah, I think we can include those, or if they're numbered in the original letter, I don't remember. Those could just be, it could be mentioned below, we agree with numbers, blah, blah, blah.
But
But
it
I
might
do,
be nice to say, we agree with this and this and this and this and this and this at the very top. And then here are some things that we are that we are concerned about. It
she
doesn't
did,
hurt to
it
start
does say
talking
that,
with it.
kinda, a little bit. Up there, it does say that we agree with most of the recommendations. But should we list them out, or it could get really long?
Yeah, that was the problem.
I think that's a good point then. Yeah, if in that first paragraph, maybe we say we agree with most of them, and all those that we agree with are listed at the end of this, at the conclusion of this document or something.
Okay, so let's go back to the original draft for a
No,
second and go up. I think there's a statement in that if we're providing this letter to highlight the recommendation that we believe warrant further, we look forward. I guess we don't.
I read it somewhere. Look at your new one.
No, because I didn't change any language. I wonder if we do say it throughout. We're like, we agree with this, but here's where we don't. We agree with this, here's where we don't, all the way through. So should we have one single statement? Oh, right there. Our board concurs with the majority of the recommendations. Okay, so we need
That's the one I
that.
saw.
Okay, thank you.
And quite frankly, I think you could cut the new one even shorter. Sorry, I can wait to be called on if other people have.
No, I'd appreciate it's really difficult where I can't see hands and we're not using cameras to see where people are. So
Okay, well, someone jump in and say they disagree then.
yeah, Joanne and Erin.
Okay, I'll say oppose. Is a table better, possibly?
In what way?
Well, let me see. I'm just, oh.
She's saying put the PEA recommendation on the left and put the USBE recommendation on the right.
Yeah, maybe put it in
Okay.
a form that it's easier to see.
Okay. Let's take that part that's highlighted and cut and copy it and put it into the other one for a second.
I would just take the ending part, the last
So
sentence,
all the
not
way,
that whole thing.
okay, all the way to the top, all the way to the top. Then so right before the second paragraph there, the recommendations, paste that for a second.
That will be much clearer to see.
So now so maybe get rid of the first line. So please note that our board concurs with the majority of the recommendations included in the memo, the recommendations for which we respectively request additional dialogue changes or removal. How about that?
I think that's fine, but I would make a change to the top paragraph.
Okay.
Don't do it yet, because I want to see what the committee, if you and the committee think, but I'm just trying to cut out as much as possible so we can really focus on our recommendations. But I personally would cut out, I'd leave the first sentence. I would delete the period after the first sentence. Don't do this yet, but people can just visually see it. I would cut out everything up until and I would put a comma and say, and concur that the PEA memo represents a starting point, and finish the rest of that sentence down there for legislative efforts to address the long-term systemic concerns.
Okay.
My
Wanna
only
highlight.
concern with that recommendation, Cindy, is that we're wanting to cast a very positive spin on the work that has been done by the legislative body up to this point. We want them to sense our gratitude that we are working together, and when we're saying that we appreciate the number of documents and sources they've utilized in developing these recommendations, I mean, we're thanking them for being so thorough and coming up with a lot of so that we are sharing this responsibility for finding solutions. And so
Well, maybe leave that part in and just take out the part in between.
maybe so. I just don't want to lose the positive spin of you guys have done a lot of work. Thank you very much. And you've been very careful and thorough. And in that spirit of wanting to get to the bottom of what's right, here are our reactions to the good work that you've done thus far so that we can move together and do even better work together in the next few days.
Have
And
they
I-
been, is the question. I don't know.
I
who
did
they
find
work with.
when we presented the audit, the second, when Superintendent Nelson and I reported to the legislative audit, which is all of leadership, right? That's both majority and minority leadership. They were very receptive and kind and discussed much that we needed to improve our partnership. So I was pleased with the response that we got.
Great.
And then maybe just take out the second sentence and leave the rest. Is that what you're suggesting, Randy, to keep that piece in?
Yes, I think so. Anything that we can say positive is not going to hurt because we honestly do value and need that ongoing partnership. And anything we can do to strengthen it, we're all for that.
I agree that it should be positive, and there's a lot of work that's gone into this. Can I just voice concerns that the response from PEA seems to be changing so much that I think some of these things are unnecessary. And I understand there's a desire to make sure that changes are made, but there was no missing money, right? There was no misappropriation of funds. There were problems over the last 5 years, but I think that some of that has to do with the funding structure. Well, a lot of it has to do with the funding structure. We want to work with them to better move forward in the future, to have transparency, to make sure the needs are met, but we need to have a reliable funding structure that will meet the needs. Am I right on that?
Yes, but recognize
I don't
this
think
letter is
we'll-
going to executive approbe, not public ed approbe who wrote the
Okay.
recommendation. So just a
Okay.
different audience, just remembering that. I think that's an important element to
Okay.
just recognize the audience. But
Thank you.
yeah, so let's, okay, so we see some potential changes here. Let's see how it ends up. Do you want to speak through your changes, Member Britton, that you were talking about possibly a chart? So if we did a table, if we inserted a table right there.
I guess it depends how long, we have to look how long that.
Well, I guess it depends on if you want one table or two tables. Because I'm thinking this one would be pretty short. You'd have, if you scroll down, you've got the PEA recommendations. There's only two. And we have one response to that because it's pretty much the same. So that would go into lines 2 and 3.
Okay, so can we do PEA recommendations on the left and then USBE response on the right?
Yeah, that's what
I
I was.
call ours recommendations are also.
Yes.
Maybe response and recommendations or just recommendations?
Well, are
Okay.
we going to, I'd say recommendations, and then our response comes in the narrative underneath where we speak to those things directly, because I wouldn't leave the narrative out. I think the narrative is important for
That's
context.
the only problem with the table. Unless you unless you do multiple tables, like issue, PEA recommendation, USBE recommendation, and then under that, the narrative.
The
And then
narrative of
next one-
why explanation.
Yes,
Mhm.
and then the next one,
Yeah.
table left, table right, narrative. Next one, table left, table right, narrative.
Yeah, so let's put the red up there for a second and see how that looks.
Chairwood,
Yes.
this is Deputy Superintendent Voorhees, and I can't raise my hand, so can I just
Yes,
insert really
please
quick?
do. Yes.
So tables are difficult for screen readers.
Oh, okay.
I agree that it will be, with Board Member Britton, that it will be easier for PEA to see your responses and your recommendations. But if we're going to include a table, it just has to be super simple, because tables are really hard to make accessible.
There's probably too much text to.
Well, and
effectively
going
make
back
it
and forth
accessible.
for the screen reader to know
What it's
to
referring
read,
to.
you know, to read what across, but not knowing what's above. They just can be complicated. I just doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, and then staff could play with it afterwards. It just needs to be super simple.
Is it legal under accommodations or under accessibility if we do 2 copies with the exact same text, one with the table format and one with just the text format?
And one in narrative, we have done that before.
Yeah. I would suggest doing that.
So that would not come up there yet, actually. Superintendent Voorhees, it's just that one right there on page, right there. That would be the one, only one that's next to it. And I agree. I think if this is the one, specifically the letter that we want to go to them, if we like this format, then that we would make one that's very accessible.
Yeah, same text, just different format. And then I think under that table, for the one we make for PEA, I would even be comfortable writing the word narrative with a colon and then putting our information there, or rationale, or however we want to say it.
In the box or
Under
outside
the
of
table.
under the table, yeah. So
And then
that'd
make
be
a new
all that's
table
in
for the
this
next
table.
one.
So you could delete all of the rest of the boxes for this section.
What do we want to call those sections? A rationale or a narrative or
And then-
evidence or support, or
would it be more than just our response? Or I
our
guess
response is in red, but I thought, when I looked at the first one, don't we have additional narrative after we put our response? Didn't we have some additional narrative, or did we not?
yeah, if you go down now to this, there's the response.
So those 2 paragraphs would go just below that the box, the table.
Yep.
And then we'd start the next table with these PE recommendations that are below.
Those are done, right? Isn't that what we put
Is that
above?
what we just did? Okay.
Yep. So that would be deleted. That's what's up above. So the only thing that would be left, then we would go into.
So
that
that narrative, that those 2 paragraphs are right there. Yeah.
Member
No.
Brenton, is this what you're thinking?
Yes, sorry, I keep trying to go back and forth to letters and to this to make sure. Yeah.
So that'd be all the way down to the last bullet point.
Is there a letters meeting right now too?
Could the
Okay,
narrative
so
be called a rationale? Does that make it clear?
Yeah, a word like that. Maybe rationale is the best word. Trying to think of something even stronger, like legal rationale, or
I don't know
Maybe
what we
just
can put
rationale.
legal. I don't know that we've had any legal
Or historical, or let's just say rationale. If we think of something that's even stronger or better, we can do it when it goes to the full board. Or is this going full board, or are we just sending it?
This is going to full board next week. That's the only reason why we're having this meeting today.
That's what I was thinking. Can we give a shout out to Dr. Voorhees for being able to do this on the fly?
I was just
Thank
thinking.
you.
It's probably stressful, and we're sorry that this is stressful.
I am
No, it's
sorry.
fine.
You know what? This is just a formatting issue. If people are okay with the content, we could, it could probably be done later even.
That's true. Now,
Do
because
you
now
want
we
these
really
in
need to.
separate boxes, or do you want them all together in this box like this? Do you want this one to be in the next box?
Yeah, this one may be better off because we do respond almost one-to-one responses on these.
Gotcha. Okay.
And do we have narrative about?
Yes. Yep.
Does the rationale need to be divided up too, or do we keep that just all the same under the fourth box?
That's probably it.
Are we not just calling the narrative rationale?
Yes.
Isn't that this? Yeah.
But I'm asking if we want to do the whole rationale under the fourth box for this set of bullets, or do we want to break up the rationale into bits that address each of these? We have to go back and read it. Is it general enough to just be under the last box for this section?
Leah is fast. Wow.
She's amazing.
Okay, so then, Chairwood, does each of these match one of
I think so. I think there's a
Okay.
one-to-one. I could be wrong, but let's
Okay,
go
but you can
through.
read it when I get it up there.
Yeah, because I think then we go through and make sure that this is what we want to forward to the board. It was kind of a summary of our rationale, and so I'm sure that there's language that the better wordsmithing y'all will want to do, but
so it does also look like we'd have to break up the rationale under each of those tables, because it looks like the text is specific to the bullets.
Okay.
Even in the rationale.
Okay, let's focus on the language next, and then we can focus on the formatting after, if that's all right.
Okay.
All right, so let's go up to the top. This is probably easier if we thought about it from the very beginning, but okay, so we read through the recommendation. This was kind of my summary, so please feel free that the board recommends that on-campus student participation includes students with 504 accommodations, multi-disabled students, and other students defined eligible through LEA recommendations. I was trying to tie into those things where we've missed counts in the past. And I know that was the multi-disabled was one of them where it's not always. Thank you, Superintendent Voorhees. I appreciate that. When I was talking to the LFA, one of the questions was, well, you keep telling us that they get there through the IEP process. And so that's why they left out the 504s. So that's why it was defined eligible through LEA recommendation. If there's better wording, please.
Should we also, I think, make sure that it says they have a hearing or vision loss?
And I will open that to Superintendent Voorhees, Dr. Tanner, Superintendent Patton. Any recommendations on this one?
If I may?
Yes, please.
I would recommend that we do indicate they have a hearing or vision loss. I mean, if there are students, there are oftentimes on the deaf school side, students who parents feel like they would benefit from using sign language, but do not have a hearing loss. And that's a different way of addressing that concern. So I think it should probably state that they should have a hearing or a vision loss, but they could be students with multiple disabilities as long as they have a hearing or a vision loss.
Okay.
This is Superintendent Patton. I would agree with that as well.
Okay, perfect. So does that look good? Does that?
Chair Wood,
Yes.
I wonder, to Associate Superintendent Tanner's comment, if this and other students defined eligible through LEA recommendations would allow LEAs to send students who didn't have a hearing or vision loss.
Okay, well then we can, I'm fine, I remove that. That was to accommodate those ones that when we were looking specifically at students last fall, I know USBE was missing certain students because of the way they were, the labels that they had put into the data search were incorrect. So I wanted to make sure that we were getting all of the students who need to be there to receive services there. So if you, Dr. Tanner, go ahead.
I appreciate that you are considering that, because I think it's important that we're including those students as well. What we discovered was there are some IP teams that classify their students as OHI, TBI, LSL, that have other disability classifications under the 13 classifications under IDEA. I think this will capture the fact that they, no matter what their classification is, that they do have a hearing or a vision loss. I think that's the idea for me anyway.
Should we put IEP in there also, just so that it's a one-to-one comparison, that we want IEP and 504 accommodations? Okay. Any member Longacre?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Wood. I just have a question. With this working group, the legislators that are in this working group, how often do they come into the schools for the deaf and the blind to visit? Do they really have a hands-on experience when they are making these decisions?
I know that I've toured with them twice. Have they been there at other times? Any of the superintendency, if you'd like to respond to that.
This is Assistant Superintendent Darren Nielsen. We have an open door policy, so the policymakers from across the state, both at the State Board of Education and our legislative bodies, are always welcome and invited. I don't know that any of us could attend to how many times and how engaged various policymakers are on an individual level.
Okay. For the ones that were on the work group, member Longacre, this summer, we had a tour, and I think we had maybe 7, maybe I'm wrong, if someone can probably correct me, but it was about 5 to 7 legislators who took the tour along with board members. Am I anywhere near accurate?
I believe you're correct. We saw, I know 4, Auxerre, there was, Baldery was there. So I think there are 4 that I could call out.
Okay, and they were the ones, so that was, yeah, so that was the second tour, because we did a specific tour for both those because they were serving on our work group, so they came through a couple of different times to look for different things.
Yeah,
okay,
everybody on the work group.
All right, any changes to this? Are we comfortable with this?
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
I just think we need to be able to I just think we need to be able to be consistent. And I guess I have a question for Superintendent Patton. Is she on?
Mhm.
Or Assistant Superintendent Patton. So currently, is it written anywhere in policy that USB students are required to be self-contained, meaning 180 minutes of service on an IEP to be able to attend on campus?
So that is a guideline. It is written in the technical assistance manual, but that is also a guideline. It's still up to the IEP team to determine the vision needs. That just gives a guideline as to once, as Dr. Voorhees had mentioned, once the assessment has been done, goals have been written, services have been provided, what in the IEP, how much of that student's day is needed for vision specific instruction or the vision embedded into the overall goals. So that's just a guideline, but we still do use that. LEAs still also use that. I do want to make it known too that we typically, and we don't have students who have 504 who are in, it's different than the School for the Deaf in that the 504 students, those needs can typically, I don't want to say always or never or any of that, but those students for USB are better served in the districts. The difference with the students who are not on IEPs would be our post-high students that are graduating with a regular diploma. So there is that, but I think that was in addition to what your question was. But does that answer your question, Board Member Davis?
Yes, Chair, may I follow up?
Yes, please.
So I think we just need to be really clear when we're talking to anybody about this. I mean, the reason that we're asking for students to be able to go to USD is because of the social isolation in there that have a 504 and not an IEP. That's why we're asking, and I'm hearing that our USBE students may not have that to that extent because of the communication. But here we're saying in the red that the board recommends on-campus student participation includes students with a hearing or vision loss and who have an IEP or require 504 accommodations, including students with multiple disabilities. But I'm hearing that that is not something we should recommend for students who are having a vision impairment, except in very limited circumstances, because the other is being able to attend the neighborhood school is actually going to better meet the students with a 504 for vision. So I don't want to muddy the waters with this language. I just want to be very clear so we all know what we're talking about, and I think we should be consistent. If we're going to give a guideline that says that in one place, then we got to be careful with the way we word this in this place.
Chair, can I respond?
Yes, please.
I think that my perception of this, Board Member Davis, is that this does encumber what we're wanting to say, because it does go back to that IEP team and the 504 process. So I actually am comfortable with the way this is written because I think that it meets the need of the School for the Deaf. And I think it encumbers what we're wanting as well. Like I said, but I can see your point as well. But I don't know that we didn't need to delineate it. But of course, that's up to the standing committee's meeting.
May follow up, Chair.
Yes.
I'm fine with all the language, but my only question is the word recommends, because here we're recommending that students with hearing or vision who have an IEP or 504, including students with multiple disabilities, attend on campus. In the guideline, we're recommending that students with vision attend at the LEA. So there's just got to be a way to make sure that we are clear in
I can see that.
places. However that language looks,
We could copy and paste and have it be twice, once for vision loss and once for hearing loss.
Yeah, and I mean the word recommends two. I see where the problem is with that, because we don't want to guide IEPs teams or 504 discussions as to where we think that those IEP the placement should be. It needs to be an authentic process that goes through
Right.
for both. Yeah.
And I think just recognizing that the board recommends is that we're trying to provide an alternative to what we disagree with on the PEA. So make sure that draw the line or delineate between the recommendation that we're making versus what we're recommending for students. It's separate. Make sure the language is such that it's the board is recommending, really here, the board is recommending that the LEA, in partnership with LEA and USDB, we determine what the best needs are for kids, not that statutorily we say these
We're
kids.
recommending that.
So, Chair Wood, when
Yes.
when you said the word alternative, at the exact same moment in my brain was option. So what we're recommending is that it is an option for students
Yes.
with 504, but that probably I think she's working on something that would clarify that. Instead of saying that we're recommending that all students with this.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we're trying to maintain, this option that they currently have now, that Utah currently allows them to have.
If you put in has an option, then you could probably take out that second part, don't you think? Because then it now is not in conflict with the policy guidelines for USB.
I would agree.
What, Dr. Patton, do you?
I agree with that. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that statement.
Could we eliminate or delete the "and" after hearing loss so it reads, be an option for students with a vision or hearing loss who have an IEP or require 504 accommodations, including students with multiple disabilities? Without the "and"?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
So are you more comfortable with that, Member Davis?
Much more comfortable. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Legally, we can't, I mean, I just,
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure we're not recommending that anything happen with these students. So I think you clarified it great, that it is, we just are trying to not, like what the bottom, right? Exclude the option. So it actually answers it better by maintaining that option wording in there, because it was that bottom one. They want to exclude the option. Okay, let's move down quickly. We have 30 minutes. Okay, so the first one was that the IEP or the add-on funding. Sorry, I've lost it for a second. Okay, so this one was that they amend the budget to start using the K through 12 WPU and special education add-on programs. So this was my attempt at summarizing what we need based on the wording that was in the rationale. The board recommends that additional operational funding be provided for programs that fall outside of the WPU funded model, such as USIMAC, deafblind services, audiological services, and parent and infant programming, if the legislature moves to include USDB designated students in the regular K through 12 WPU and special education add-on WPU programs. Any discussion to that? And once we get into this, there are some additional discussions with USIMAC in terms of right now the funding is being USDB operational funds are being used to fund that, whether it becomes a new line item. And then there's another one, Superintendent Patton, the ACH. You could, if you want to speak to that right now, if you feel like it's it's a valid concern, but I think it can also be discussed as we work through these concerns with the legislature.
Sure. Can I speak to that, Chair?
Yes.
I'm happy just to barely touch on that. So you're right in that USDB is currently overseeing USIMAC, but we have been sharing that role in the past couple of years or past few years with USBE. One of the complications is our APH funds. We have two different accounts. We have the USDB APH account, which are only for USDB campus students. And then there's the statewide APH account, which are for all other students statewide, no matter if they're receiving USDB services or not. That APH account is Armando Venegas is the EOT, or the one that is running that account, and he is the director of USIMAC. So we had the question of whether or not, because I don't know that I should be over Armando, because we're two separate accounts, and TBIs and students all over the state, again, regardless of their association with USDB, have access to that account. And so I worry that would be just me in conjunction with Armando, which it seems a little complicated, but I think we can work with USBE and get some clarification on that, because it still needs to be very separate accounts.
Perfect. Thank you. Any comments to this section?
Yeah, can I just ask, I'm guessing we need to delineate these, right? Because USDB has had to use their own funding to fund programs like this, and they haven't received extra funding to cover the costs. Is that correct?
Right. And if we go to a WPU model only, there's not enough funding to fund these
That's what I
additional
thought.
programs with just student funding.
Yes, and we definitely need to, and has that been pointed out to the legislature yet? Like, this is one of the reasons why there's a shortfall in funding, because so much money has, okay.
When I talked to the LFA the other day, when he mentioned that they were looking at going to this this model, we both agreed that that's not enough money, but it does do some things very specific to students, which would be a benefit. Like I pointed out before, the inflation and the enrollment would be a benefit. So we just have to make sure that these things are also covered.
Chair?
Yes.
Sorry. I just want to clarify, USIMAC is its own appropriated amount. It's in its own appropriation unit, and they receive their own funding.
Oh,
So
they
this
do. Okay.
Yeah, this is
But as
outside.
I understand it, hasn't USDB had to put money into USIMAC to fund it as well?
They have used some carry forward in the past, yes, to cover some expenses.
Okay,
But
so that
for the
needs to
most
be,
part, they do get appropriated their own funding.
Okay. I thank you for that clarification. I am sorry for the misinformation. So, but this is still, it's still worth the conversation, right? Leaving it in here so it is knowingly a separate thing.
Was that for me, Chair? Sorry.
Yes, sorry. It's so weird talking to black screen. Yes.
I would say yes. I mean, anything right now is open for discussion. That would be a huge concern if they tried to fund the entire agency with just WPU, is that won't cover it. So for discussion's sake, I would say yes.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Yeah, that's my concern also.
could I just should we get any clarification on how much funds have had to be used from USDB sources to cover USIMAC or other services?
We do have a history of that I can get for you if you want, of how
Okay.
much they've had to
I just think, it
No.
would be good to clarify, because there has not been enough funding to cover the services. I mean, that's part of the problem, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let's move. Oh, Member Davis.
I'm sorry if someone just said this, but so our finance folks have vetted this recommendation and we're going to be okay, because it seems like this would be a big cut in funding. Has it been thoroughly vetted by our finance people is what I'm asking.
So if you look at the, sorry, Chair, is it okay? It is hard
Yes.
with it.
Sorry if I missed it already. If you already said it, forgive me. I had a distraction for a second here. So I'm sorry if this has already been asked.
I didn't. Sorry. The recommendation that they've made is to look at the opportunity of putting the campus students with the WPU along with creating a funding model for USDB to be able to recapture any funding from the LEAs needed. And then they do recognize in there that that's not enough to cover the operational cost. So they do realize that that's not enough. And I would imagine part of that would be that we would still continue to receive an additional appropriation above and beyond that.
May I follow up, Chair?
Yes.
Even if you take the outreach piece completely out of it,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way that moving to a WPU model is
Correct.
going to be able to fund our on-campus students.
Correct.
So if this is what the working group recommended, we can move forward. But I hate that I don't want people at the legislature to get in their head, oh, well, we moved to the WPU. Why are they now still asking us for money every year?
Yeah, that's why this recommendation is so critical. That we have to have additional operational funds. And no, the work group didn't do anything. We talked a lot about outreach funding, but we did not talk about a WPU model.
Well, the only risk of asking, the pro is getting some ongoing funds. The risk is them saying, well, do it with your WPU. If we still have to go back and ask every year, would it be better to go back and ask for the amount we need, or to be getting some ongoing through WPU and then still going and asking every year? I don't have the answer to that. I'm thinking out loud, but that's just my concern at this point. We can move forward.
Are there any feedback from Superintendent Patton or Tanner on that to provide a little more context?
Do you want to speak to that?
I'm happy to speak to that. This is just me talking, so I don't want it to be just my opinion on that. I think it could be problematic either way. As far as I see what Board Member Davis is saying, as far as getting a WPU, and then there's already money that's been allocated for our campus students, and then us, needing more money, as we know we will because of the WPU not being enough. But I also see that there's one that I think that there's big changes that are that they're wanting, right? That they're wanting to see changes. And so I don't know that I have a clear cut answer as to what is better and what is worse, as far as my own opinion.
Can I just ask a question? Again, yes. I would assume there seems like with a WPU for a school like this, where every student has a 504 or an IEP or special accommodations, the WPU should be different. It shouldn't be the same WPU. So I was thinking about how Texas did their school choice, and when they did their voucher system, they allotted like $8,000 for certain things, I think, or 10, but for special ed students, it was like 30,000. So has anything been discussed with a different funding structure for the WPU for this school? Because it is unique. It is not like any other LEA.
Chair.
Yes.
So that's part of their recommendation here, is that they want to spend the next year really evaluating the funding structure and run through a few things. This is their recommendation that we look at this model. It doesn't necessarily mean that's where we'll end up, but the goal is to have a final funding recommendation for the legislature in the 27 session so that it can be funded in 28.
Thank you. Dr. Tanner.
I was just, and my comments are brief. I just wanted to say I echo the concerns that Board Member Davis has shared here. I don't know what it means. I don't have the answers. I do have questions in my head about how this would support the funding for our school, and that's why I hope we have the time that we need to actually really vet this out so that we can make sure we're adequately funding it. So I just wanted to say I reflect the same kind of concerns.
Thank you. Okay, Member Davis.
Can we ask staff to get some costs analysis for us on what addition it would have to look like? Because this isn't a typical WPU. You do have the special ed add-on. A lot of our students are also self-contained, so you've got even a more of an add-on. However, we've got a lot of students who aren't considered self-contained, but it's expensive to run these schools with this smaller numbers. And so I'm wondering if we could, instead of just asking for the WPU with the special ed add-on, we ask for a weighting, in addition to the WPU and the special ed, something akin to the at-risk weighting, but it's probably going to need to be more to support a small school campus, I think. And I think we need to know the numbers. I think we need to ask our staff to do some digging and what would it cost and what would we need to ask for to have enough, because the whole point of asking for WPU is so we don't have to go back every year. It's kind of growing with the WPU and growing with the students, but it will never be enough to run that tiny school with the immense needs that are there, especially for our students with multiple disabilities.
Is that something that you could prepare for our board meeting? Do we have enough data to run
We
some
don't.
models on that?
We do not have enough data for that. I think that's why the recommendation is for us to
It's
work
2
through
years
it
away.
over the next, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then could we add some weighting language? Because ultimately what we need to look at is what does it cost to run our campus schools? And how much money would we be getting with a WPU plus special ed add-on? And what's the difference if we were to do that right now?
If I remember right, I think the recommendation did talk about a weighting for the campus students.
So then I think in our recommendation, this in red, you're saying, did I miss it?
No, in the PEA's recommendations. When you go back and read the full context of it.
Full context of it. Let's see what we've missed.
I mean, because a weighting specific to USDB would be what we would need. It's not going to fit those other formulas, really, I don't think.
Trying to see if I can find that language.
That's what I was looking for too.
So in the finance, recommendation provide a statewide standard for student funding based on the types of services required by a student's IEP and USDB's role in implementing the IEP. These changes will have an impact on how WPs are generated by enrolled students and cost sharing with the student's resident LEA. USDB as a designated LEA includes to amend statute, includes students where USDB is their designated LEA in the regular K through 12 WPU and special education add-on WPU program and provide associated funding to USDB. Assuming approximately 325 full-time equivalent students, this change may increase WPU costs by $4 million. While this is not enough to funding support in-house, it will provide a stable fund that changes over time with growth and inflation. include intent language to direct the state board to develop procedures to ensure so that's all that it's saying right now, because that's
So I
the,
think we need to make a recommendation for the, while this is not enough
okay,
line. And the recommendation would be to study a weighting, a USDB specific weighting, in my opinion,
okay, so put in a new box that
or just add it to that line in that box.
puts in the assuming language.
Did it work?
Which box? Sorry.
The red.
Be right there.
Yeah, okay.
And then, sorry, I'll let you do it. I'm gone.
Okay. I just wasn't sure where you were pulling. I gotcha. I'm on it.
So what would your language be, Member Davis?
Well, nodding to their recognition that this is not going to be enough. I would just say, study a USDB specific WPU weight.
So the board recommends that PA study.
It's already up at the top. The board recommends. It can just be added to this.
Oh, is another bullet point. Okay.
Well, that's fine. Yeah. I would just say the board recommends a USDB specific weighted WPU. It's going to look different than the other.
Okay.
If this committee agrees with that. I don't want to just we can take a bifurcated system just to get some ongoing funding, but we're still going to be in the same boat all the time.
Okay. Any thoughts to that? No,
I would like to know, if possible, what the total cost is to run our on-campus schools right now. And how many students with a WPU and special ed weight, what that total is and what the difference is between those two.
And I think it might be
Give us an
important.
idea.
It might be important to put that into our recommendations as part of the study, so that the board recommends a USDB specific weighted WPU based on this information, the total cost to run this school, the number of students currently in the school, and the difference. When you said it that way, it was so simple, straightforward. The difference between the
well, are you intending the WPU to run the entire school then? Which means we don't need the additional operating funds up above. So
no, because we have some really special things there, like USIMAC, for example. But I do think that we should look at and parent infant program. I mean, these are all things that are different, but I think for the students who are in the school, in the brick and mortar,
yeah,
we should try to come up with an ongoing formula that would provide the services that they need. Now, there's going to be some federal funding for that too, like occupational therapy and whatnot, but I think we do need to at least look at something ongoing.
How does that compare to USDB operated self-contained classrooms?
Are you talking about self-contained as on the IEP, 180 minutes a day? Or are you talking, when you say self-contained?
So in their recommendation, they talk about the 3 ways that USDB provides services. So they have the outreach services. So they're in their regular schools. and they get their K through 12 and they get the special education add-on. Then you have USDB operated self-contained classrooms. And it's saying that they would get the regular K through 12 special education and other qualifying programs of the resident LEA. Further, require the resident LEA to remit the special education add-on generated by each student enrolled to USDB. Is that sufficient to cover their costs? Or would they also need this additional weighted? This is probably a
It wouldn't
Dr.
need,
Tanner question in terms of how you're doing your self-contained classrooms.
because they're not running a school, they're running a classroom. And the way that they use self-contained in that context sounds like they're not using the legal special ed definition of self-contained. They're talking about classrooms inside USDB, unless I misunderstood what you read. Because self-contained is the number of minutes of service.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Tanner.
So our self-contained classes out in the districts, we have one out in Carbon and we have two out in Washington County. So if we're thinking about costs, they don't require the cost of a building that we're maintaining.
Yeah.
The school is maintaining that. However, the cost of the teacher and the aide, if there's an aide, is USDB's because it's a USDB operated classroom. So that cost is very similar to what would be the self-contained and minus operating and maintenance of the buildings.
Which they're already getting through the regular K through 12. That's maintenance and cost.
Yeah, yeah.
Would the WPU add-on be sufficient? I'm thinking, because isn't WP add-on 1.5?
I don't know how much the WPU added, but I don't know that it is.
So just a thought as we move forward, and maybe it's taking us down a rabbit hole, but we need to think about how those, if we did a weighted, whether or not those self-contained classrooms we would want them to also qualify for that weighted.
Yes, we're going to have to explore that, because I don't think that the cost for them is going to be as large as operating your own building if they're
Yeah.
housed inside a already functioning building. But we'll have to think about, that's a lot of maintenance and operation. We can work on that in addition. Those
Okay,
are good
let's
comments.
move forward. We're almost done with our time, and I'd like us to have moved through all of these. So the next one was putting developing procedures to ensure that USDB designated students are included in the annual October census of enrolled students. And Superintendent Nelson can probably speak to this. There was some concern with the data collection that it wasn't going to be ready by August 2026. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's some variables here that I'm not sure. We might be able to make that timeline, but it'll involve working with obviously our IT team, potentially data and statistics, and if we have to go through updates to the vendor SIS systems to make changes, that sometimes can be more than a year out.
So would this be, so the board recommends the timeline for including USDB students in the annual October census be moved to fiscal year 2028? Do you think that buys us at least some time?
Yeah, that seems certainly more reasonable. It's hard to have a definitive answer without all the parties that would be involved, but it's also sensitive to the legislature and our needs to not to expedite this as quickly as possible. That seems like a reasonable proposal.
Okay, any comments to this one? Okay, seeing no hands, I'm going to move to the next one quickly. Okay, the next one is to amend statute to require the state to review and approve any changes that impact facility use and make recommendations on increasing course offerings or educational services. Based on the wording that was in the letter, I put the board recommends that authority to approve new course offerings or educational services remain with the board in its role as the USDB LEA board. I had some real concerns, like if we are their LEA, and it's not the legislator's role to determine what class or courses are offered in an LEA situation. Any comments to this one?
It feels like they're already saying amend statute to require the state board to review and approve any changes. I think we just need to, in a positive way, declare the board has the authority to approve new course offerings or educational services, and that's our role.
Yeah, it was that third line, and make recommendations to the legislature. Can you imagine every time we wanted to add a new course offering, you have to wait till the legislative session rolls around?
But this is
Yeah.
specific to changed space, capital monies. Those
It
that
is.
require
I mean,
specialized space.
it is
Oh.
because it's like chemistry classes and weight training and things like that.
But do we need to say anything in red? Because this is not, because what we say in red, we already know that's our, what they're saying is if it requires a change to the facility, then we need to, right?
But shouldn't we be able to make those decisions of what we've got to do in terms of change of facilities in order to accommodate the curriculum that's necessary, that we deem necessary? I mean, there's nobody we're the board. We're not getting any
I agree.
approval in Nebo School District to put the chemistry, redo the chemistry lab or whatever. That's a local thing.
But we don't get any property tax. I agree with you 100%. And I wish we could, but we don't get any property taxes. The legislature holds the purse strings to make those facility changes.
Do you
Unless,
recommend any changes to this, Member Davis?
well, I mean, to Randy's point, I mean, we could always say, we want to have the weighting of the WPU cover all the operational costs and be able to have a capital fund, but I just don't think it's going to fly. I mean, I think when we want to make changes to the facilities, we're going to have to go to the legislature with just all things considered where we're at in this spot right now, but I could be wrong. It's just kind of what I perceive with conversations from, LFA or legislators and things. But the red doesn't necessarily get at the heart of, the red is saying what Randy is saying, which I agree with, and we all want, but the black is saying that we need to talk to the legislature if we're going to change the facility.
Can I ask a question? So are we
Yes.
saying that we're not going to be able to offer appropriate courses or have the facilities needed for those courses because the legislators don't want to spend the money on it? Or unless we get approval? I mean, it's
Yes,
not handled this way in LEA.
Only those that change the only those that change the facility that require capital costs.
So
If it's
may we
done with M&O, you can do it.
May we insert 2 or 3 words and say the board recommends that authority to approve new course offerings or educational services, including any changes needed in facilities, remain with the board in its role as the USDB LEA board.
But where will we get the money?
Well, we'll have to go to legislature to get them, undoubtedly, but it's not their decision. We're determining what needs to be done, and they will have to come up with, some funds that will allow us to do what needs to be done as the people charged with the responsibility for educating these kids and providing the chemistry lab or the whatever it is that we've got to do.
What do you think about taking away all of our red and just asking for clarity of how they are defining specialized space? Are we talking about buying new chemistry tables, or are we talking about adding a lab onto the, you know, back corner of the school. The smaller decisions should be ours to make. Those that are costly, considerably
First
costly.
ID, man.
What's that?
Oh, sorry.
Well, could we use that in addition? That we want to maintain the authority, but we would like, the board recommends the legislature to clarify in statute what is meant by required specialized space.
Yes, I think so.
Good.
Yeah, and that the board maintain authority. That opens up a conversation, right? As to where our authority comes and goes with that
Do we need to
request to
take the
clarify.
end?
Now we take the thing out that I had put in down there.
The end off, we probably need to take. I would put a period after services, because until we know what they're actually talking about,
We don't need to get defensive.
no, we don't.
Good
And
point.
that's what, yeah.
Okay, that good?
That's
Okay.
great.
Looks
Okay,
great.
the next one is limit comprehensive high school services to the Salt Lake County campus and hold further development of programs or the expansion to other campuses until the state board can further study the issue and provide recommendations and cost estimates to the legislature. So it's important to recognize that they were not, there was some misinformation spread out that they were eliminating the high school services. They were not eliminating them. They were limiting them to the campus, which will not work. And if you read our rationale below, you can see why in terms of what's happening on the other campuses. But I wanted to, so this language was kind of back to what the working group recommended, was that the legislature recommit to the multi-campus model that prioritizes parents and their primary role in the education of their children. That comes from our strategic plan language.
I think this looks great. It's a good one.
And then the last one is that they recognize the most efficient model that for providing comprehensive includes coordination with LEI high schools and the provision. And this language comes from actually the recommendations we got from the parent group that came in this morning. The board recommends that USDB continue to meet student needs across the state, including through classroom programs and campus-based high school options where appropriate.
Yep, I think that's good.
So those are the recommendations. Were there things in the rationale that you did have all that language since Saturday? Were there things in the letter that you wanted changed? Did any of you bring changes that you hope to see in this meeting happen?
I thought that the rationale provided was thoughtful and persuasive and helpful to be shared with the full board and on to PEA and LFA and anybody else that's going to read it in the future. So I'm grateful for the preparation on the part of superintendency and pulling those ideas together.
Okay, Member Longacre, I noticed you unmuted. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. So if we have to be really convincing with our responses and recommendations, would it be fitting to add personal examples and just going back to, you know, accepting kids with the 504, like your sister? I just don't want the legislation to say, no, we're not going to do it because it costs more money. Well, this is why this is why we need this. If we have to be super convincing, would it be in our best interest to add examples?
I will speak from my perspective, and then there are 3 other board members to respond. I think those examples need to come from the people listening to this meeting.
Okay.
I think that the emails that we get from our parents of students, from our deaf and blind populations who have experienced either the support of this school or have grown up without a supportive system and want a supportive system. I think the lived experience of those people is more valuable than anything we could provide right now. But I will have any other comments from board members.
I had one when it was the capital improvements as I was looking at. I'm just wondering if we have enough. We already, okay, so what page was that on where it was, sorry, I just wonder if we're working enough with the districts, and is there, because I think there's a disparity in how the services are provided based on the district. Some districts, like I hear really great things about Washington County School District, and they are great to work with, and they make sure that the services are provided to these schools. But then I hear that some of the other districts just kind of give them the cast-offs, or, you know, and often bump them from services and times. So how do we make sure that especially the high school students, those upper level high school students, if we're partnering with the districts, that they get equal services?
So there was a recommendation regarding the use of buildings, which the superintendency reported that was already the current process to work with them.
Right, I know it is already.
So, yeah, so I guess we could add additional language that would, I mean, statutorily require them to do more, but I don't know. And I know, Member Davis, you've talked to this. You've managed a school before in terms of master calendars and buildings. And do you have any feedback to this?
I'll just say when I had a special classroom that came to my school, I just said, I moved an in-class classroom out to the trailer. I said, I'm not going to put this students with special needs out in a trailer. They're going to be right in the center of our school and be part of everything. I don't know that we can mandate that. I think, you know, just like we can't mandate a Cadillac education for a student with special needs, it can only be a free and appropriate public education. But I think we would hope that would be the desire. I just don't know that that can be mandated. And maybe there are some guidelines that could be put in, like, but it gets tricky with different facilities in different growth areas and such.
Thanks, Cindy. I know it's hard to mandate things. I guess worry about that. And I also am a little concerned about the recommendation to continue holding any construction, but I know we're still trying to figure things out, because I know it's, you know, things were approved like 5 years ago and then put on hold, and all the prices keep going up for everything. So the need was shown and the legislature approved things, right? But then how long do we continue to hold off on all the capital improvement? I mean, there were the 2 main ones, right? It was JMS for high school, and Washington County had land given to them to build a smaller school to house everybody right next to the district schools, where they could share services with the boundary school right there. But are those just kiboshed?
I mean, the money's still there. One thing we anticipated is that let's not bring attention to the fact that we still have money there. That they could,
Okay. So that they could hopefully do that.
yeah. So,
okay.
but there is that under the provision D, provision of capital facilities, amend statute to provide that the state board first try to partner with area LEA schools to meet USDB space requirements, including specialized education activity space, before requesting additional state-owned space for USDB. That's current practice, right? They go, they look and see where they can partner with high schools. They're doing that. So we couldn't really oppose what's already in practice. But if you feel that there's additional language that you'd like to see added, that could happen if someone wanted to discuss that.
What does everybody else think?
I don't think we better talk about capital improvements yet. We're just in the very beginning stages of building this model. I think the least of our concerns right now are capital facilities, even though they're critical. But I think we've got to get, and we're moving aggressively. We're not waiting around. We're not being slow about this. We are moving aggressively to help develop the model that is going to govern the responsible and effective education of our deaf and blind students for the next decades or couple of decades. So let's give ourselves just a few months before we re-enter the specific request for these are the facilities that we've needed, and now we really need them, and we've established ourselves. We know what we're doing. We know how we're going to make this happen in a fiscally responsible way and in an effective way using best practices for our students. And then I think they'll be ready to talk. I am noticing, however, as I'm just staring at the page we've been staring at on the shared screen, that the very bottom of that, it says, we are concerned about the requirement to obtain legislative approval for new course offerings. So it almost says exactly what we're already saying up in our recommendations. So someone will need to, staff or superintendency will need to go back and review those rationale paragraphs to make sure that they are not just a repeat of what is up in the recommendation. If there's something that we need to say as backup to the recommendation from USBE, great. But if not, we should delete it and shorten the verbiage that we're providing in terms of rationale.
Okay, thank you. Member Davis.
Shoot. Someone had said something about the classrooms inside the building, and now I can't remember what I was going to say. I apologize. But going back to the recommendation of making a guideline, if the classrooms are inside the building or in a trailer or whatnot, we could add some language that talks about the safety aspect, using safety as a condition for decision making might be something to consider.
Do you want to add that as an additional? Let's see where that would fall in our recommendations. Let me go to that official document. So it's D provisions would be in the last one. We talk about, well, it's just number 1. Hold further development. I don't think we actually talk about, okay, so the high school experience is number 4. And the comprehensive is number 3. So classrooms would come before that. That would actually come before the increase or decrease costs. Sorry. Found that one too. That was number 2. So I think we actually did respond to all of those.
Well, this is more in response to what was expressed about how some districts will work with USDB for a classroom in the facilities and some are not working well with them.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the place to do this, except for with and this, now I remembered what I was going to say, the PEA recommendation not to move forward with any facilities I mean, here's the bottom line. JMS needs to be rebuilt.
It does, sooner than later.
And but yet I see the wisdom in what Randy is saying too, because we're trying to get this kind of model and structure move forward. But could we somewhere at least where it says to hold on those? I mean, we at least as a starting point could say, we reiterate the need as shown in these audits, and we can cite the audits that came through that JMS needs to be rebuilt. And in all of our other areas for now, we will continue to work with the LEAs and ask our LEAs to consider instructional needs and safety when they are looking at facility space or something of that nature.
So, Member Davis, we didn't respond to number 5 with the continue to hold constructing new or replacement facilities.
I'm
Because of
asking
this,
if we should.
well, because of this, it said until the state board can address the financial data and scope of services. It didn't say through after legislative approval. It just said that we needed to get things in order. And we assume we support that, right? Like,
yeah, then I think we just, and I apologize because I didn't remember that last caveat.
Yeah, we when we read that, it was like, wait a minute, there's no limits on this. It just says hold it until the state board can address the financial data and scope of service changes addressed in recent audits in this report.
So maybe when we do that, we also address the concern expressed in this meeting about, you know, how LEAs are working with space with separate satellite classrooms. And we do that all at the same time.
So do you not think that we need to put in something with the state board first, try to partner with area LEA schools to meet USDB space requirements? That was number 1 of that section. Do you?
I think we probably are going to have to stick with that we're already doing that.
Yeah.
Except for in a few rare instances, Springville, Ogden, and Salt Lake. Is there anywhere else we're not doing that?
And maybe it's where we show that's part of that number 5. Until we show that, that's what we show. These were the efforts that were made. This is what's changed over time. This is when they've been moved. This is the type of location they've been moved in. Like we make a comprehensive report that shows, look, we've been trying to do this. This is why we are where we are now.
And is it possible to also show, like, get feedback from parents in different districts, or do you already have that? Like, in what districts has this been working really well? Where are there shortfalls and needs still?
Absolutely. I think that would be part of that to show the full picture.
May I ask, just as we're wrapping up, if Darren or Michelle or Susan have any reaction to where we've headed throughout this meeting? Are there concerns or reservations about the conversations we've been having? Are you feeling semi-comfortable with what we've been talking about? Do we need to stop and listen and recognize that we've missed the boat in a few places, based on your lived experience with your students and with the organization, particularly in recent weeks and months when things have become so intense?
Yeah, Chair, may I start on that?
Yes. Let's have Superintendent Nelson, and then let's go to Superintendent Patton, and then Superintendent Tanner.
Yeah, thank you. Their voices will be really important because of their roles here at the Schools of the Deaf and Blind. My role, Board Member Booth, I want to just acknowledge the thoughtful conversations that have gone into today's work. I don't have any specific concerns. Again, my perspective is one of recognizing this is a process of policymaking, that you're in the early stages of this. And there's a lot of concerns in the details, right? And I think as a committee, you've discussed some of that, and any staff members for the USDB or stakeholders, they might share, and they might have elevated concerns about, well, I'm nervous until I see the impacts. The discussion about the WPU, for instance, would be an example to where theoretically and conceptually getting some more stable funding to the Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind, I think almost all of our stakeholders would agree with. It's just difficult to get behind it until people understand what the costs, any unintended consequences that come. But for this point in the process, I've been very pleased. I don't have any concerns about the work that you've done and the direction you're going as a board related to our students for the Schools for the Deaf and Blind at this point.
Thank you, Darren.
Chair, is it all right if I speak?
Yes, please.
I would concur with Darren's with what Darren has said. There are, I think that through this process, I feel like we have received a lot of support from the board. And when the PEA recommendations came out, of course, they were a little shocking for us, but I know that stakeholders, there were some shocking things for stakeholders. And I feel like the board listened and, jumped on it as far as met with us as a superintendency and listened to others and listened to stakeholders to come back with these thoughtful responses. I will say that, the big issues for the School for the Blind are, limiting the high school program to only the Salt Lake campus. That's big. And then the weighted pupil unit as far as the funding model was concerned. But I really do think that this was a thoughtful process. And there will need to be further and more detailed discussions. But I think I like the idea of addressing the PEA recommendations as a positive thing, like thank you for taking the time and whatnot, and these are our recommendations, but we are going to need to flesh these out down the road and receive more stakeholder input. But I don't have any qualms or any problems with what has been developed. And I just want to say that we have felt an immense amount of support from USBE. And I want that to be really clear. I feel like the USBE, especially this standing committee, has really delved into the details and you're understanding the problems that have been here for a long time, and are being an excellent spokes, just speaking for USDB and understanding, and I just really appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Tanner.
Well, in alignment with the context of this week, I would say that my cup is full and I feel great gratitude for the board and the care and concern that you have devoted to these issues. I feel like you've listened to us, and to be heard means a great deal to these communities because oftentimes they're marginalized. And so I think I'm very grateful that you've listened, that you have thoroughly and thoughtfully vetted things. And I would have to say, as we even go back and think about the OLAG audit, I want to publicly say that this board is very attentive to us. They've been very good, and they have really delved into the key issues that are impacting us and made thoughtful recommendations that have included stakeholders. So thank you. I'm very grateful for what's been recommended today.
Thank you. Member Davis.
At the risk of diving in back after those beautiful comments, I just want to manage expectations for the public because JMS does need to be rebuilt. And if we do what the legislature's saying and we wait till we figure out the funding and the systems and all of this, we've been told that can take 2 years, at least a year, possibly 2. So it's not like we're going to go back to a board meeting next week and get this figured out or send this document in, and then now we can start rebuilding JMS. So that may need to be a topic on our next or one of our meetings, that how do we work through that narrative? And do we in this document say we will continue to work with our LEA partners, and also reiterate that JMS needs to be built as supported by the audits, and then list the audits? It was what DHRM or someone's FM or whatever that facilities management audit was.
Thank you.
I don't want to open up I don't know. Do we need to say something like that in this document next to that recommendation to work with LEA partners until we figure it out? So they know we'll do it, but it really does need to be rebuilt sooner than later. Or do you want to leave it?
I'm wondering if we, this will go to the board next week. If
Put it in
we,
there.
if we put it in there, if we can come up with some language that kind of either go with number 1 or number 5, but figure out where the right place to be is, but
Got it.
craft that appropriately. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, ma'am. Great idea.
Okay. Well, I would seek a motion, if you're comfortable with this, to move this forward to the board with technical changes to, remove duplicative language or whatever, if anyone's comfortable with that.
I'm happy to make that motion.
Okay.
I move that we send this response to the full board for their discussion, review, and approval with any technical changes that need to be made to the format in order to achieve clarity and specificity to the points that we're responding to from the PEA recommendations.
Thank you. And Member Booth, could you add to that to provide an accessible document along with it?
Absolutely. How do we need to add that? What would be the? Oh, I guess on the screen. Just a second. Let me put my glasses on. Okay. That's great. And provide an accessible document to PEA. So I move that the committee.
Well, it's for and provide an accessible document for the public. So
all right. For the public.
Yes.
All right. So here's what it says. Remember, the committee send this response to the full board for their discussion, review, and approval with any technical changes that need to be made to respond to the PEA recommendations and provide an accessible document for the public. Does that sound good?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah, for making that happen so quick.
Sure thing.
Any discussion from board members? Make sure I'm not missing hands here. Nope. Okay. All in favor of the motion to send this response to the full board for their discussion, review, and approval with any technical changes that need to be made to respond to the PA recommendations and to provide an accessible document for the public. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say no. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much for your time. I want to thank the superintendency for their hard work over the weekend. I don't think that USBE gets a break, or USDB has gotten a break since about January of this year. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I want to thank our stakeholders. The input that we've been provided the last few days is invaluable. And I would reiterate what I stressed to Member Longacre. Please share your stories. Please share your stories with us, share your stories with the legislature so they understand the impact that these schools have on our children and our families. And I want to thank our board members for your flexibility, especially this week as we move forward. And I will take one more motion.
I move
make
that
a-
we adjourn.
No, go ahead, Randy. Sorry.
I move that we adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn. I will assume Member Brinton will second that.
I'll second that.
All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, thank you so much. And please have a wonderful Thanksgiving week.
Same to you.